Probably the most difficult part of building this generator is making the coils. You need some kind of device to do it. At one time we actually wound coils by hand. We made this little jig here, comes apart, and we would put the wire on here and wind it by hand, a couple of hundred turns. Another option is to use a drill. Okay, third option, which is the one that we use most often, is we use this coil winder, which we bought online, and it was probably, I don't know, $40–50, not much more than that. And we've wound hundreds of coils with these coil winders. This is an earlier version that had the chuck. A lot of the new ones don't have a chuck attached. If you can get a chuck with it, that's fine. So you have to make some kind of stand here to hold your wire, and okay. Or you can, you can just come up with a jig, something like this, and you drill. And so just in this case, I've got some washers and some kind of plastic nut I found in my junk box, and let's go the right way. Okay, right, and so someone has to keep track. Maybe you can make a little mark on here and count each time it comes around. Okay, so that way you know how many turns you have. All your coils should be the same size. Coils need to have a hole in the center, and depending on the configuration of your stator, and we know what the stator looks like for this particular machine, and the size of your magnets, you decide as to how the hole should be. This hole's a little small for the large inch neo magnets. This is a better size. Maybe it's even a little too large. And we went through looking at coil magnet combinations. Okay, so again, you got to decide what you want for coil, and now it's time to wind it. So this configuration, the coil was wound, and I like to use the outside dimension of the plastic to be approximately the size of the finished coil. So, and in that case, once you get a good coil, you can literally use your drill and wind to the same size, and then weigh your coils. And I've written here that the coils we were making turned out to be 350 turns at 40 grams, number 26 gauge, and the 200 turn one was 23 grams. Okay, so again, once you get a coil wound, you can weigh it, and then you pretty much know what you're looking for the final product. This one is taped together. It's kind of bouncy. Okay, and this is actually a commercial coil, and they've tied them together with string. Okay, so the actual making of the coil involves the winding and then the final finishing it up. This is a jig that I made, and it's interesting. And I gave you some pictures of this close up, and the reason why I did that is because there's some detail you probably can't make out here. There's slots here. Okay, there's a hole here. Okay, and one side is exactly the same as the other side. Okay, so the idea is, let's take, so now I would have grabbed this, I need a longer screw in here. Let me just go back and do that. So when I take this apart now, got to carefully take it apart so everything doesn't just bring off. So there's my coil, and I put these wires in here before I even started winding. Okay, I'll actually make one of these coils for you. So what we're looking for is a coil that's not really too tall, but we do want it to be wide. This is probably a good coil. This is probably a 350 turn coil, and I can tell pretty much by how it fits on the form. I made these forms. I use arm shape, and again, you can make them up in plastic. It's not a very difficult drawing when you think about it. It's just a bunch of circles that have been extruded. This one's got some kind of texture to it, but I always like to put a slot in here so you can put these winding wires, okay? Because when you take it off, if you just had a bunch of wire, you end up with something like this, and then you try to tape it. This configuration, you actually twist your coil before you take it off the winder, and then you take it off the winder. Okay. So let's try to wind the coil. Okay, so I've got a long, looks like 832. Okay, and so I need something I can grab in the chuck. I got to get the lines aligned. I'm going to tighten the screw down. Oops, regular screwdriver, not a Phillips. So let's get this. Okay. Okay. And make it nice and secure so it doesn't come apart. Oh, and again, I got the lines are lined up. So this is going to go on my chuck now. Now, again, if you don't have a chuck, what I was using before was a threaded rod, and there's other ways of fastening. Okay, so I'm going to tighten it down. Okay, so there it is. There it is. Okay, now, so I need. This is the tricky part, and this is what takes time and practice. Starting the coil is the most important part. Okay, so I'm gonna, and I usually have a bunch of pieces of wire cut ahead of time that I use to do this, but so the wire is going to go through here. See, and start from the other side. There we go. You can see that. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So again, this is kind of tricky. Sometimes I'll just put a little piece of tape to hold it so it doesn't fall out as I start turning the. Okay. Now, I like to use 3. Okay, so that's 1. And again, I'm on the wrong side here. I can't see the other hole. Whoop. Like I said, this is the tricky part. I'm going to turn. There it goes. Okay. Okay. Students, we've wound hundreds of coils for different generators. We've used different forms for those coils. This is a form I made just for this particular triangular coil. And again, this may not be the right form for your coil, and I'll put this will be on ThingsGurv. You'll be able to download this file if you want it, and it's also I do share these files in on shape. If you're so interested, all these files, I guess I can actually put them in a common area where anybody can get them. Again, this is the hard part, getting all these wires ready to spin. Yeah. Bring it around. Okay. There it goes. Come on. Oh, I'm going to try it from this side. I just can't get this in the start. If I wasn't in front of the camera, I could get it to go better. Okay, I'm half. There we go. I got it through. Okay, again, this is the difficult part. Now I just get this little piece of tape to hold everybody in line. Next thing is I'll zero up my counter. Okay, now it's gonna wind in that direction. So now I'll take my wire and I gotta find a hole. Again, there's a hole on the side of the coil. You could do this a couple of ways. You can just use one of these slots. So you could just run your wire like that. Okay, so now that's in the middle. Okay, and just be careful when you're winding because this thing's gonna wobble all around. And again, I'm on the wrong side, but here we go. Okay, and so you just guide the wire from side to side. I think you probably saw more of my arm than you did the actual winding. All right, so I'm just on the wrong side to do this. Okay, so and whoops, stop. So again, it's a wind and move your wire from side to side. Okay. So try to keep it even. You don't want one side longer than the other side. Now, this coil, this form was made for the 300 turns, and you see here we are. We're at about 100. We'll get up to 150. I'm out to 150. You see, I'm just a little bit about halfway. Okay. So, say I was going to make 150 coil. I don't want to go with the 350 just for time. And okay, so everything stopped. Okay, this part of the process, you could make a decision here. You can actually, at this point, you could just take the coil. You could just take this right off. Okay. I got here's my coil. These are the wires that are gonna hold my coil. This is my end of my coil. Okay. So this wire is gonna. Whoops! Careful, it doesn't. Oh man. Ah, that's weird. Okay, this wire. Take the tape off. Whoops. Careful, these wires will actually slide back and forth. Okay, so at this point in time, what you're going to do is you're going to take the wires, and again, use a pair of needle nose or something. Again, I don't like to get my arm in the picture here, but you get the idea what's going on. Okay, so here's what's going on, right? I've got these two wires, and I'm going to wind them together. Okay, and you want to wind them together to the point where they're tight inside on the coil. And again, this form was made for a much bigger coil, but I just don't need any more of these coils. Okay, so that's that one. See, and these wires are going to get removed eventually. It's not important that your windings are real nice looking right now. And again, this is the time. This is what takes all the time, is to get the get the coil secured well, because the next step is going to be take it off and and once you release the nut, if you don't have the coil nice and tight, it's just going to fall apart on you. I don't know why this particular cross piece here jumped out. I don't know how it got from underneath the coil, and I think I can probably live without it. Okay, so at this point, take it out. Okay, so I still have, whoops, I have here's the end of my wire. These are my two ends, this one and that one. And give it, and when you cut your wire, make sure you don't let go of your coil wire, because that will just unravel too. So, secure that someplace. There's usually a place on the coil. Here we go. Okay. That's it. So there we are. Now it's interesting, I don't remember this, but when I made this coil form, I left slots so you could actually take the wires in and out when the coil was done. So I really didn't even have to put the wires in to start, which I could have put them in later. So it was just a design consideration I made back in the day when I was doing this, but I don't know if you can see this, but I literally just put that wire back in there. I thought I lost it, but I didn't. Okay, so now I'm just going to run that back. Okay, and that's going to be that's going to hold the coil one more place. Yeah, and you probably get away with the two, but it'd be nice to have the third one. And again, it takes a lot of finesse to get this whole coil thing working, and to get coils that are really perfect. Okay, a pair of needle nose always helps. I'm just going to pull this across. So I made it so this side was captive and this side's not captive. Again, when I was designing this, I was kind of problem solving it as I went, and who knows why I did what I did then, but I think it all pays off now. So I'm actually going to twist that one on the side. Never done that. That looks like it's going to work. And so now I just need to take this apart. We figured when we were really good at it, we could wind the coil in a half an hour and finish it. Okay, so Again, this is only one possible way that you could make these jigs. Okay, so there it is, and there's those. You can't, again, not too clear. I don't really have a good camera, but these are the wires we were talking about. Okay, and so that sets the thickness of your coil, and then you got to wiggle this off without things falling apart. And so if your wires are too loose, it's a good time to tighten them up, tighten everything up. You don't want any loose coils. Okay, so that looks good. That looks like a good coil. And again, you got to be kind of careful when you slide these off. Okay, and again, that wire is going to come out too, right? That wire is going to be the end of our coil. Okay. There it is. Yeah, it's a pretty small coil. Again, it was just to show you how it's done. And there's those. These wires are really important. This one's loose. I'm going to tighten it right now. Okay. So the next step that I would do, and I've done this quite often, would be I will put this probably on top of a piece of wax paper. I put some super glue on it and weigh it down so that the coil is all together. Because in the final outcome, it's probably, you want it to stay together like the commercial guys. You don't want it to be all fuzzy and loose like this guy. And if your coil gets real, so here's one that's all done. That size about 350, but again, it hadn't been glued, and it's, it's getting kind of squishy. Okay, so it looks like this is the end of it. Okay, but again, even if it has some loose ends, when you glue it, if you use some super glue around it or epoxy, and you use wax paper on both sides, you can get it off. Okay, and that will give you a final on your glue on your coil. Okay, so that's that. So here's the drill, and again, these are just some fender washers in here and some spacers, and I could actually just drill a hole in here to bring the end of the wire out, or else you could just leave the end in and try to fish it out when you're done. I like the idea of a hole to pull the wire out. And again, this is not a hard drawing to make. If you're a 3D printing person, you've probably done some drawings, and so what's the important things you need to know? Well, the important thing is that the center piece should be approximately the size of your magnet, if you can do that. Okay, I like to have the outside dimension of this to be the outside dimension of my coil, so I'll know when I've made it the right size. Even if my counter goes bad, or I don't have a counter, I could just kind of do it by eye. Okay, now this is a good shape, right? So this is a good shape for a coil. Again, you could cut this out of a piece of cardboard or plywood, depending on how many coils you want to make. And then you could use, again, you could just take some plywood, and it will wobble around, and if you just take your time, you can wind that coil on this machine or even with your drill. Okay, so again, this is it. Okay, the coil now again will get glued or fastened to something, and then you can remove these, or you can leave them on and just trim them back so they're not in the way. But again, you know, you're trying to get your rotor as close as you can to your magnets, your stator, excuse me, and you don't want anything to interfere. You want them all to be the same height, and you don't want anything protruding above the coil. So that's why I'm saying I'd probably take these all off when I'm done. Okay, because I glue it down. Okay, so let's take this apart and see what it looks like. Rotors that were built using this method, and these came out really nice, and they're all glued into the stator, and these were taped, and that's a whole nother method to get them off of the core and tape them. So you could literally do that, if you use this narrow tape. This is actually a little wide. You want something narrow. But at this point now, you could tape this. You could tape it into 3 positions and get it nice and tight. Okay. Now here's one that was kind of loose, and so it's going to stay in this stator. You're never taking it apart. So what I did was I put epoxy on all 4 of them. You can see how it's solid here, and I put again wax paper, a weight on top of it on the bench, and just a weight on it. 5-minute epoxy, it hardens, and that's that. Okay, but again, in this case, you'd have to orient your coils properly before you did this. So look, I don't know if you can see this, but the coils were not really good and tight, and that just brought everything together. Okay. So again, that's the most difficult part of building the generators, making the coils, and the machine makes it easier. The drill still works, but you need some kind of form, and that's your first step, is to make a form that has the right internal piece and an external side piece. And again, simple jig right here with just scrap parts that are in the parts bin. Thank you.